Okay, sir.
Okay. Ani, just 1 minute. Ani, can I test your mic and video?
Yeah, hello everyone.
Hello. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So today we have we'll be simultaneously starting our first year and second year courses, as I mentioned. And we have with us Dr. Ani Yeremyan. She has done her PhD on diaspora studies and from Jawaharlal Nehru University, and she is based in Armenia and with the Armenian embassy. What more I can say? And her work is related to Armenian diaspora in India, but she has done massive number of other work like comparative studies on Indian diaspora, Armenian diaspora, all this. She has been a member of JRFBT also, and she's a very active researcher. This is what briefly I can say about Ani, and in the interaction we'll know more about Ani. So Ani, over to you.
Yeah, so sir, can I share the screen
Yes,
here now?
yes, yes. Fine.
Just a second. Can you see the full screen?
Yes. First title is I can see. Can you go forward?
Yes. So hello everyone. I think we all of you were present last week for the inauguration of the course, and I welcome you all, and I hope you will all get the knowledge and the experience that you are looking forward to. And today's lecture, or like it's like mostly it will be like an introduction, but I hope that we will be able to get some knowledge on the differences of migration and diaspora, as well as we'll understand the basic theories on migration as well as diaspora. And we'll try to, if we have time, we'll try to discuss some other concepts on that. I'm not sure what classes you had initially before this class, whether this is your second. I'm not sure about it, but I already hope that you know that people already started migrating from one place to another, even long before the nation states and the states were established and they existed. And during this 1 hour, let's see what is migration. So, sir, can we do something interactive or not? I mean,
Yes.
I would also like
Up
to
to you.
know what people think about migration. Like, what do you think migration is? If anyone wants to uh, answer, maybe we would like to hear you as well, then we'll go forward. If not, then I'll continue. Okay. Then, so first of all, when we think about migration, we should
No,
think that
Ani,
this,
there
yeah,
is some, I think someone want to speak, Tamaya.
okay,
You can raise
Hi.
hand, some instruction we can
Yes.
share. Those who want to speak, they can raise their hand or use the chat box if you are traveling or something. Okay, so this is the way you can, Tanmaya.
okay. I see that Maya wants to say something, maybe.
Hi, ma'am. This is Tanmaya.
So,
Hello.
my basic understanding of migration is the movement of people from one place to another place.
Right. So when we are talking about movement, then what comes to our mind is that it is a process. Migration is a process. So it's never, it is not something existing, it is not something given, it is a process that is continuous. And when we talk about it, then we also think that within this process, there can be multiple theories. There is no single theory that explains what migration is. But the well-known theory on migration is neoclassical theory, which is more widely known. And within this theory, what generally the researchers or the scholars think is that it relates to the supply and demand of labor, which means that within the labor market and within the mechanisms, the major factor for the migration becomes the more like whichever market mechanism is better, then that causes for the further migration of the laborers. And hence we come to the next theory, which is the economic perspective. And people basically they migrate for better economic perspectives. But I would like to focus on the historical structural theory, in which the international migration is considered as a result of the capitalist market. And in this case, it has little to do with the employment or the labor market. It is rather the dynamics of the market development and the global economy. If you have any questions, you can later on, or even in between, you can ask. There is no issue. Now let's go to the diaspora. First of all, when we talk about diaspora, when we were talking about migration, we were thinking about the process. That is a continuous process. In this sense, diaspora and migration, they are somehow related, but diaspora is not a process. It is already something that is established. And we should also think that not every migration leads to diaspora. That is, not every process will come to an establishment of a diasporic community. But let's go to the etymological origins of the word diaspora. It comes from the Greek word, as I mentioned here, diasporan, which literally translates into like scattering. And in this sense, we also, when we talk about diaspora, there are some similarities, not similarities, but we should also relate diaspora to the dispersion. Again, dispersion is again like a process which can lead or not to diaspora. And hence not every movement is a diaspora, because in diaspora we usually talk about settling of roots somewhere that is creating homes across nation states and beyond nation states. Why I'm talking about beyond nation states? Because when we are talking about diaspora, we also talk about already established identities that can exist beyond nation states. And it is when we are saying that diaspora is also very closely related to migration. In this case, in many articles or researchers in their scholarly literature, for example, I would like to mention the impact of homelands upon diasporas. Connor here notes that because of the large number of migration, comparatively small percentage of the world's population lives within an ethnic homeland. When I mentioned about this beyond nation states, this closely relates to what Connor says. That is, they are settling their roots beyond nation states within an established identity, which can also change within time and within space. And this can also presume that diaspora is simply viewed as a dispersal of people from the country. But as I already mentioned, it is not so. Diaspora should not be considered just as dispersal. It is also settling roots somewhere, and which can later on, it can also neglect the characteristic features of what migration has. And based on this, whichever we talked, there are multiple theories of diaspora. On one hand, diasporas, they are theorized based on their characteristic features, like I mentioned here, and those characteristic features, they can be related to their religion, to their language, ethnic made, and various aspects of their culture. And on the other hand, the theories of diaspora, they can be also related to their push and pull factors. And of course, in this case, when we are talking about the push and pull factors, we are also trying to focus on in many theories, scholars try to focus on the paradigms of border, home, homeland, memory, trauma, and as I mentioned, the culture. And if you pay attention within migration or within the theories of migration, all these paradigms, they are missing, because the migration is still a process, but diaspora is already something which is established. Hence, these paradigms become more important while discussing various theories of diaspora. But of course, when I was talking about the etymological aspect of diaspora, and I mentioned about the Greek origin of the word diaspora. In theory, other major diasporic communities like Jewish community and Armenian community, they were considered as their experience was considered as the classic form of diaspora, to look up for the diasporic formations. And let's see the historicized approach. This is my favorite one, but this historicized approach, it can be related to any theory. It depends on how you are looking at the diaspora, whether you are looking at it, whether you look at it from the aspect of their characteristic features or from the push and pull factors. Always you should take into consideration the historicized approach or the historical approach, because every historical period and every geopolitical event and event, they can have different relation to any diasporic communities, and they can differently affect on the formation of the diaspora outside their home countries and within their hostlands. So in the case of so in this historicized approach, when we pay attention to this, the Jewish and Greek Armenian diasporas, basically the elements that were more important for the formation of these diasporas were the displacement, trauma, and also coercion. And those were the most important characteristic features that led to the formation of these diasporic communities. But when we go forward, I will show you that within different historical periods, these characteristic features, they can be changed, or there cannot be one singular diasporic community within a broader within the broader singular diasporic community, national ethnic community. Of course, that's why we generally say that nowadays the use of the term diaspora is very loose, and it can not only relate to these categories of coercion, displacement, and trauma, but it is also related to such concepts like the decolonization, immigration, global communications, and of course transport. So based on the theories and based on the characteristic features that I was talking now, we distinguish different types of diasporas. And of course, these types of diasporas that you see on the screen, they are not final, and they are not like the only ones that we can talk. Like I mentioned about the classical formations, Jewish, Armenian, Greek diasporas, they are considered like victim or refugee diasporas, and this concept or this definition, victim diaspora, was given by the Jewish scholar Cohen. And of course, after in the 1970s, 1980s, all this, the concept of diaspora was developing, and other types of diaspora came forward, like the labor diaspora, you see, trade diasporas, and cultural diasporas. And of course, in the recent times, and especially after COVID, we talk about the digital diasporas. It's a new phenomenon, and it's a new type of diaspora, which is mostly related to the digital technologies. When diasporas, they try to form their communities and to have better links within various diasporic communities of the same ethnic community. Digitally. That means they are cross-cutting all the borders and having the digital community formations. They can have also, as they can have the ability and the also better opportunities to be related to each other on the emotional level or the social level, why not on the economic level also. And if you want to know more about it, we can discuss it later also. And as I mentioned, there is no single diaspora. Within all these diasporic communities, there is no single type of diaspora that can be related only to one single diaspora. That is, when we are talking about, like here we mentioned, the Indian diasporas are mainly trade diasporas. This is not true, of course. There can be, within time and different time periods, there can be other new developments within various Indian diasporic communities, and also victim diaspora can also come forward within these all formations. And why not labor diasporas within the same Indian, various Indian communities? That we should take into consideration that in our contemporary times, the formation of diaspora is a complex phenomenon. There is no clear-cut and singular definition of what diaspora is and it is not. So when we want to sum this all, we should also think that after all, diasporas are social formations. When we were talking about migration, it was a process, and it was basically related to the economic developments, labor market development. But in case of diasporas, they are social formations, and they have social, cultural, economic, and sometimes even political links with their homeland, while at the same time they are part of the social, cultural, economic, and political lives of the host land. Which means that if in case of migration, members of these migration groups, they don't have they are not rooted within their host land, because they are on a continuous movement. But when we talk about diasporas, they are more like social formations, and they are very much rooted in their homeland, but at the same time they try to be part of the social, cultural, economic, political formations if they are of their host land, in order, because they are like in most of the cases of diaspora formations, they are considered like citizens of their host lands. So in that case, they have to be like members of the host community, host society, but at the same time, they have very much rooted cultural links with their homeland, so they preserve their identity in this relation also. So if you have any questions, we can discuss, but let me read for you these one of the just a second. Like I was talking about different concepts and theories. One of the well-known diaspora scholars, William Safran, he brings like within the definition of diaspora, as I mentioned, there is no singular definition, and every scholar brings up new definitions and new characteristic features, new aspects of discussing and defining diasporas. But I would like to read out for you this the definition given by William Safran, who first focuses on the diaspora from the aspect of angle of scattering. So he thinks that diaspora, first of all, is scattering from the original center to other foreign locations. This is the first thing. The second thing that he pays attention is that these diasporic communities, they preserve their collective memory and the myth about their homeland. The third thing is that these communities, though they are preserving their homeland, the myth and the culture, the collective memory of the homeland, and they are based in the host land, while they are trying to be a member of the host land, they are sometimes not easily accepted by their home society. And in many cases, they also feel alienated from it. The fourth thing that he pays attention to is that their ancestral homeland, in many cases, cannot be or is not their true home, which they had before. So these two words, like homeland and home, if you like focus on these words, then you will understand that homeland is mostly like a geographical location. When we are talking about the land, it's like more a geographical location, while home can be also an emotion. That's why the place where one was born or relates to, they can be completely different things. And the next thing that he pays attention to is the collective duty to preserve the original homeland. So if you were careful, like we discussed all these things before, but now we are like, when we are summing up, you can also see that many scholars, they pay attention to this, that in many cases it's like their duty to preserve their original homelands, and also in many cases they try to assist in the prosperity of their homeland and to contribute to the development of their home country. And if you try to compare this with the migration or migrant groups, this is completely different. That's why I'm saying that they may be related to each other, like migration and diaspora, but they are also very different from each other. Maybe that's it, but I would also like to discuss these things with you, and I would also like to hear your questions, because I think we raised some points here which can later on be a good opportunity for deliberation of other questions by you.
Okay, Ani, I think it's a good definition and clarity of concept and how both are related also you have mentioned. I think when you talk about migration and diaspora, migration is a flow concept. People go from one place to another. They can come back also. We call them circular migration. They can again go, and this can be temporary and relatively longer. But when these things settle, it becomes diaspora. So diaspora is a
Yeah.
stock concept. So it's very important in this program when you talk about migration and diaspora. Annie has already explained those. So now I think let's have some discussion so that any doubt, any clarification can be made. Okay. Kindly raise your hand or you can write in the chat box also. Yes, Kartikeya.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, ma'am. The lecture was indeed very enlightening. I had a question regarding the typologies of diaspora that you had
Mm-hmm.
mentioned earlier. I was wondering, why is it so difficult to come up with a proper framework for making typologies of the different kind of diasporas? Like, what problems are academics encountering in putting them in solid frameworks? That's one question that I had on my mind. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I would say this is not a problem in the theory, but this is rather the vast opportunity given by the academics and the researchers, and also this is a good opportunity to have this vast typology. Like I will bring the Armenian. I mentioned in my lecture that it's mostly because of the historical structure, social developments, that the definitions of diaspora tend to change within time, within space, and it is affected the development of the different geopolitical events. Also, they affect the development of new definitions. For example, the Armenian diaspora. Let's take the Armenian diaspora. Armenian diaspora was considered as a classic form of diaspora, and all other new varieties or new formations of diasporic communities, they were taken into consideration within the comparison or in comparison to the characteristic features of Armenian diaspora. So initially, Armenian diaspora was considered a victim diaspora because it was formed after the genocidal event, atrocities, and etc., etc. But let's take another historical event that caused the migration of Armenian diaspora to India, which was not at all caused by the atrocities, like I mentioned, or any coercion or any forced displacement. So in this case, the Armenian diaspora migration of the Armenians to India was not at all as considered as a victim diaspora. In this case, Armenian diaspora was instead like a diaspora that was creating, that was enlightening Armenian communities worldwide, and also the Armenians in their homeland. So that's why I'm saying that historical events, it's not the right thing to think about diaspora as a singular one. It's a formation, social formation, but within time periods, different time periods, and within different geolocations and within different spaces, the characteristic features of diasporas can change. Let's take the India as a country with different cultural communities, ethnic communities, also with different languages, different cultures. Within India also, we cannot talk about one singular culture, right? So how can we talk about diaspora community of one nation, of one country outside the nation borders as one singular type? That's why within different time periods, one ethnic community can develop various characteristic features that's resulting to different type of diasporic community also. That's why within different time periods, like there was initially the victim diaspora, then there was another diaspora which was not at all caused by forced displacement. That was another type of diaspora. Then we are having digital diasporas, which can also relate to many other diasporas. Digital diaspora is not only like the typical characteristic feature only for one ethnic group. It can be related to many diasporas also.
Yeah,
I hope I could
I-
answer, and I
yes,
could.
it was clear, but what I see, I can add a few things what you told.
Yeah.
As you told, the diaspora term actually originally applied to victim diaspora, Jews, Armenian, and that's why they are called classical diaspora. But
Mm-hmm.
over the time, if you see last 20 to 30 years, this word was applied to many communities, whoever,
Yeah.
outside their country. And if you see India itself, Indian people have migrated to in many countries during ancient time as a religious preacher, as, traders, as
Indentured labor.
labor, indentured labor, but contemporary diaspora, you find, freely those are migrating as software engineer and others. So all cannot be same. But when we
Mm-hmm.
use this umbrella term diaspora, we are bringing various typologies which are also evolving. So that's why there is no constant, terminology. It's evolving. It's a good sign. It is not a very rigid sign. Any concept which is more encompassing, which is evolving, actually is a good sign. In fact, if
Mm-hmm.
you see any concept, globalization, or any concept which is very popular, they also undergone lots of changes. When they started, it was more of a economic term. Later on, it was more social, psychological. So many aspects are embedded in that. So diaspora also as a concept evolved. It was so much, fluid over time. And now many people who are deterritorialized, those are settled abroad, they are also called diaspora. So it's a kind of evolution, but it's also good so that it has a power actually to to encompass many things. And it got, because of this, it got political currency. And many countries, they have now diaspora department, diaspora ministry, and all this. So it is a powerful concept now in that sense.
Yeah, I would also like to add, like I mentioned before, it's not at all a problem that we don't have one single definition of diaspora. In social sciences, it's even much better that we have various perspectives to look at the same issue. In this case, it will also help us to some extent to address problems, not to create a problem, but to address problems and to be able to better understand what can be different, like different problems and different ways of looking at the same issue or at the same concept.
Thank
Okay.
you, ma'am and sir. That was very well explained, and I understood. Uh, I only meant it as a in terms of a research problem and not as a a real world problem. So thank you. That certainly does broaden my perspective.
Yeah, in research, it's not at all a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, any other questions, so that, this is the initial, first unit. So some understanding is very important, and your questions are very important for this.
Mm-hmm.
Any person from senior batch can add something? Yes, Fasil has written something. Yes, I agree with you, Fasil. When I compare these two diaspora or multiple diaspora within Indian diaspora, like we have trader diaspora, we have religious diaspora earlier, then now we have labor diaspora, then most privileged diaspora like IT and other professionals. So diaspora can be opportunity side and it can be a positive thing, not always traumatic and this is what we call with the victim diaspora. Don't raise hand. Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, in your session, you did mention about the identity aspect of the diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give a little bit more information there in terms of how would they identify themselves when, apart from migration, when they come to diaspora? And is there any research area there in terms of any struggles that they face to what is their identity looks like for the current generation and probably in the future generations?
Yeah, that's a good question. See, the identity, again, it's like identity is very vast. We should talk about like within one single diaspora. There is no one single diaspora, one ethnic community, first of all. But when we are talking about the identity, there are, of course, there are multiple scholars who are talking about it. My work itself was on the identity transformation of the Armenian community and in India. But see, within, again, we are talking about, we should again talk about the historical different events. Within different historical events, the identity of a certain diasporic community is changing accordingly. Even one single event can affect the identity of the diasporic community. But if we are talking generally, in general, the characteristic features of a diasporic identity, diasporic community, of a diasporic community, they are the language, the religion, different aspects of their cultural practices. For example, this is my favorite thing when we talk, for example, about various religious festivals in India. Those are celebrated in a different way from the same celebrated within diasporic community, in any Indian diasporic community. Same is for the Armenian diasporic community. The diasporic identity is completely different from what we have in our nation states or within the established borders of the country. And I would suggest, if you have time, you can read this article by Armstrong. He's talking about different ways of looking at the diasporic identities. There he discusses Chinese, Indian, Armenian, Jewish, and all various types of diasporic identities. And yeah, that's it. But if you have, like, if you want to elaborate your question, please do that. I'll like something.
Anil, there is a question from Devtar Chatterjee. Okay,
Yes,
please go
ma'am.
ahead. Yes.
Okay, ma'am. I'm Dr. Chatterjee. Ma'am, I agree with all your enlightened opinion. And just to add a few comments, I think that even within each diaspora, there are multiple layers. For example, Professor Rabin Gauricharan has shown that those who are twice displaced from their host, the Fijian Indian diaspora, there are multiple layers of the Indian diaspora in Australia. There is a sharp difference between the Indian migrants and the Fijian Indian diaspora. Or though we club them as Indian diaspora. Similarly, the Caribbean Indian, East Indian diaspora to the USA and the Indian diaspora or the Indian NRI Indians, there is a subtle difference. Or that is, I am just resonating your views that there are multiple layers in each and every diaspora, isn't it, ma'am? Sir.
Yeah, you are right. That's true. Within one, let's take the host country as the
Yes. Actually, Professor Robin Gauricharan, ma'am, he has shown that how we in the NRIs, there's a very sharp difference between the NRIs and the Caribbean Indians who have migrated to the US or Canada. And all the literature, how we cannot, there is no sense of oneness or unity between the Fijian Indian, even in Australia, Fijian Indian
True.
and the Indians, those who have migrated from India and the twice migrants, or those who have been displaced from Africa and they have been forced to migrate to Canada or UK. There's subtle difference, I think, ma'am. There are multiple layers, or even in each and every diaspora. If you have mentioned that the trade diaspora within the Armenians diaspora, there is the forced diaspora, those who have been forced by or to migrate to other countries, and those who have came to India by historical reasons during the Mughal period and onwards for trade and other purpose in India. I can remember Nawab Sirajuddaullah's Khoja Wajid and Khoja Wajid, one of the most important Armenian merchant, I think, in the 18th century. Sorry, in 1755 onwards. So there are multiple. I think you are. I resonate with your enlightened opinion. There are multiple layers within each and every diaspora, isn't it? Yes.
You are right, that's true. Within, we are generally, when we talk about diaspora, the host land is one of the most important points to look at, and as a geographical, from the geographical perspective, and not only from the social, political, and this is based on how they are related to their host land and host country within the same country borders. The same diaspora community can develop different characteristic features, and based on that there are even different layers of diasporic communities, like you mentioned, within singular border, within the single country, host country, there can be different layers, and that is also related to their economic attachment, economic, political, social, and this can vary from diaspora to diaspora. And based on this also they develop various characteristic features of their identity, also diasporic identity. And yeah, you are right, that's true. And it also depends on their suppose there is a migration, there is a movement from one diasporic community to another. In this case also they develop other features, and this is also affecting on how their identity is gaining or getting new features. This can also be moving from one country to another, from a second host country to a third host country, that can also affect on their social and emotional attachment towards their host country. And this is very complex in that sense. And when we were this is just like the same when we are talking about home and homeland. Home is more like a feeling, like an emotion, and when they move from the second host land to a third host land, in this case their host land, second host land, also becomes like some kind of social and emotional attachment way of looking. Yeah, this is another way of looking at that. So it's very complex, and we should not look at diaspora, various diasporas from only one singular perspective. There are various ways of looking at that. That's why diaspora and diaspora studies, migration, specifically diaspora studies, they are interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. They are related to various disciplines of research, academics, like psychology, and why not IT, economy, and all various aspects.
Any other question? Otherwise, you'll stop. But there are so many books also. If you want to have more, reading. I think Robin Cohen Diaspora book is one of the masterpiece. Then there are so many articles like Stephen Warthbeck article on diaspora, and I think there are so many other books also coming currently, Thomas Fisk and all. You can read them for more knowledge on this particular topic. But otherwise, our course unit also is sufficient to get a very basic view on what is migration, what is diaspora, what is interrelation, and if there are any question, you can always pose it through WhatsApp group and email us. Ani is there, Ani will be here for entire course, so you can ask even today's question in the forthcoming classes.
Yeah, regarding the question raised by some of the on the identity, like I mentioned about the Armstrong, the article by Armstrong, it's an old article, but it will give you some basic overview and knowledge on how we look at the various diasporas and how the problem of their identity transformation is looked at the diaspora studies. It's Armstrong, and his article is Mobilized and Proletarian Diaspora. So you can have a look at it. It's a very short, very small article. So I hope you can have time to look at it.
Okay, Ani, if I think there is no other question, we'll conclude this class. So thank you, Ani, for a very, interesting, factual and very informative class. And thank all of you for participating so well, raising questions and making it very interactive. We'll meet again next Saturday at 3 p.m. and Ani's class will be at 4 p.m.
Thank you, Oli. And Sahu sir mentioned, if you really have any questions or you want to know more, I am always available. You can contact me.
Yes. Okay, goodbye.